Hello, good morning, good evening, and hello, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, and wherever you are in this wide, wonderful world that we live in, you are very welcome to the Global Sales Leader Podcast. I'm your host. I'm all about building up relationships, successful sales relationships, and how we can monetize good interactions with people for the longevity. And it's all about that. I work in training and coaching and other facets around business and lots of different areas. But I'm also fascinated by other people, how they work and how they do. This series is all about insightful leaderships, people that have something slightly different. What I want and what I hope is that everyone that I interview, that people gain some knowledge, some insights. I always like to say some golden nuggets of information. And today we got Lee Hackett here with me today. Hello, Lee. How are you doing?
Hi, Jason. Yeah, I'm good. Glad to be
Uh,
here.
And it's good to have someone on the same time zone as me today, which is also, it's always 6, 8, 9, 10 hours different. So, Lee, I'm in Dublin and you're in, remind me where you're about again.
So I'm in the Wirral near Chester, Liverpool, Manchester. That'll orientate people a little bit.
So, you're welcome. Look, a little bit of a synopsis about Lee. Lee was a pro footballer and now's turned into an entrepreneur. He quit football, soccer, however you want to call it. It's the same thing, and grew three businesses up to significant revenues. And he's had some good learnings and good ways of understanding how to scale businesses and how to grow using some phenomenal tactics within sales and leadership and business, because it's all about building and scaling the business. And I've been there as well. And you've been on the FTSE 200 public company, peak performance athlete, mindset. And that's an area that I want to go into today, because it's all about the mindset in whether you're in sports or whether you're in business, or this is the Global Sales Leader Podcast, and we're talking about mindset and in sales, because we really want to understand how to make and how to build successful salespeople that have that ability to just get up and do it without any push from their managers or kicks in the swift direction or whatever it might be, but to have that significant mindset. So Lee built highly effective marketing funnels and other collective way. He's also a podcast host like myself. So look, I've missed out lots of stuff because I want you to tell about your little journey from, if you could tell us a little bit of anchor points from how you got into being a professional footballer, soccer player, if you're listening in the US, because we've got a significant amount of people from the US listening, and how you pivoted towards sales and how you use the elements of football, soccer to and utilize it to the business scenario. There's not that many people that have done it in those sort of connotations. Here in Ireland, we have Jamie Heaslip, that rugby player turned into a business person, and there's a few others like that. But if you can give us a little bit of background about who you are, Lee.
Yeah, no, of course, Jason. I think you articulated it quite well. I think in terms of the quick overview there, I think I would definitely start by saying I've made a lot of mistakes in that period. So yeah, a
Yeah.
few wins, but a lot of mistakes, and I value them as much. But yeah, taking it back to football, soccer. How did I get from football and soccer into business? Well, it was kind of by accident, I would say. So when you play professional football, soccer, you when straight from school like I did, you kind of forced also to go to college, and
Yeah.
I was terrible at school, really bad. I was completely football crazy, so I had no interest in anything academic. But when I played football, had to go um, to university, had to go to college, learned about business
Mhm.
because that sounded interesting. And I guess where my background, where I come from, all of those kind of things, you had to be a little bit entrepreneurial. It was a
Mm.
bit of a tough area. You have to have your wits about you. So I think I was probably developing entrepreneurial skills at a very young age. I had paper rounds, milk rounds. I had people working for me on a paper round.
Oh, I know that one.
Probably when I was like 11 or 12. So it was always there looking back now. But when I stopped playing football, and there's a huge amount I learned from elite sport that allowed me to kind of just jump into business. So when that opportunity came, I was extremely lucky, kind of right place, right time. Got into a business in the UK that was a PLC, but it was growing unbelievably quick. And I got into their fast track management program. I was the youngest manager ever at 21, 22. So allowed me to kind of get exposure to some very, very, very high caliber individuals who kind of give me some real insight and mentorship, and kind of adapted from there. And sales was the part of business for me which was the easiest. Still is. And there's particular reasons about that, I think, but maybe we'll explore that today. But I think sales has always been a more natural part. In business, you kind of have to, I believe you have to be reasonably good at lots of different things, right? I think that's the art of business at its core, particularly as a CEO. But I think sales for me was always the biggest one. So it was quite an easy leap.
So what makes a salesperson? Or because I find that you have to be a people person. There's a lot of things this year, over the last 18 months, 2 years, is big things this year is soft skills, and you have to do this, and you have to do this, and this. But I think it's people skills. And in sales and helping others get what they want, there is something that there's a DNA in a salesperson that can either outsell or help other people more than others. So what do you think, if you broke that down, what do you think that might look like to you?
Yeah, I think I would partly agree, Jason. I would phrase it slightly differently, because if I take myself as an example, definitely I would not class myself, and I think the people who work for me and with me, as a people person, right? I think I'm much better now than I was maybe 10 years ago. It's been a big part of my personal development is that's always been a blind spot for me.
Right.
I've more as a leader and I was like this when I was leading sales teams. Look, we're going to climb Everest, and if you die along the way, then whatever, right?
Okay.
But we're going to climb Everest no matter what. And so if you want to get there, stick with me, kind of thing. That doesn't work. It's not sustainable. It works in short bursts, etc., etc. So it's always been a big part of mine, a big part of my development. But I think what I would say, where I do agree, I think what good salespeople do is they understand people's needs. So they're able to understand and tune in on body language. They're able to tune in on, what makes that individual tick. And, I come from a tough area in Liverpool. That's where my background come from. And I think it was a skill I learned then. You had to be able to kind of assess people quite quick. And I think in sales, that's a handy skill.
Absolutely.
I could always sit in a room, understand the person on the other side of the table, genuinely as well, not purely tactically from a sales perspective, and really tune into them and understand them. And I think that is for me, a key skill in sales, particularly high value sales.
Yeah, I think it's empathy. It's really, it's not about you, and it never is about you. You have some wonderful products and services and whatever else that's behind you. They know that. But as long as you can listen to understand, but as long as you can empathetically sit in their shoes for a second and see things from their point of view, and that's all about understanding their needs and everything else around that. This is one of the character traits that I've interviewed loads of people, from global CEOs to multi-billionaires, and there's character trait that sits along it all. And it is really fundamentally just listening to the other person, asking some smart questions, and just relax a little bit. Don't be a robot, and understand if you're having a script in front of you, forget it. It's not going to work. And that's the challenge with a lot of companies. They're given a script and they say, go by the script, and that doesn't work. So what other character traits have you got that is significant? Because I looked at your profile and you have a process, a Lee 7-step framework. But is it a framework or is it a process?
I'd say it's a framework, and it's more, I guess. And the way I always think about sales is coming from a context of growth. I think sales has such a specific meaning or perception
Yep.
in the organization. But for me, when I'm thinking about sales, I'm thinking about growth. So I'm thinking about, and if I'm working with businesses now, if the company that I lead if we're consulting as we do around the use of technology, then we're thinking about how can you use this technology or how can you use this framework to grow. Mm-hmm. And I think, that's a slightly different perspective also on the sale, right? And I think this is where things have changed in terms of, my career has always been predominantly B2B sales. Mm-hmm. And so quite long sales cycles, quite high values, that whole world has got very complicated now, in terms of how people buy, how buyers buy, and how businesses, salespeople engage. So I think a quality that I would always isolate is consistency. So, it's just the art of consistency in sales, in that engagement, in whatever that might be. And often people will ask, well, what do you mean by consistency? So just do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
It's surprising how much that works, right? Is actually, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to follow that up, and I'm going to be consistent, and I'm going to give you what you need. I'm going to listen, all of those kind of things. That wins for me more than the kind of type of maybe approach, which is kind of rip off and scarper type for me, sales of kind of just get in, sell something and get out. I'm thinking about growth. I'm thinking about retention, relationships, long term, all of those, all the time.
Yeah, I totally concur with you. Relationships is one of the core areas that I'm in, because I know once you get a customer, once you get a business relationship, you've got to nurture that. But you've also got to find out a lot more about that person, because that builds trust. And I think trust, and as you said, consistency is one of the laws of influence and persuasion on the Cialdini's laws of influence and persuasion. But it's so true. And I'll give you an example. Today was someone was supposed to ring me at 10 o'clock this morning. They even said at 9:30, I'll give you a call at 10 o'clock. 11 o'clock came, no consistency there. Do what I say, not what I do. But I always believe if you say you're going to do something, you bloody well better pick up that phone at 10 o'clock this morning. Otherwise, for me, I'm bang on the dot. If I say I'm going to do something, I will do it. And exactly the same as yourself. So I really understand and I completely concur with you. So what other character traits, what's made you successful in what you've done?
Yeah, I think in terms of the context of sales, consistency is definitely my secret kind of weapon. I think or superpower, if there is one. I think in everything I do, whether it be kind of fitness or health or business, my most important project is my family, and so all of these kind of things I try to take a consistent approach, and that works. But I guess also in sales, and I think I kind of mentioned before, one of my areas of development has always been around how can I become much more empathetic to people, and much more understanding of their problems and challenges and needs, and not just about the goal, right? Not just about the objective. And I think being humble in sales, and
Agreed.
again, is a huge disarming opportunity. Just saying, actually, I don't know, right, is quite a good thing often. I've been in situations, Jason, where even I've knew the answer, but I've actually said, I don't know, because I want the client, I want the relationship to feel and understand that I'm a humble guy, right?
Yeah.
I don't know everything, but you know what? I'll be consistent. I'll find out. I'll come back. So these are the things for me in terms of that have really worked, not just in kind of the sales, but in relationships and in building businesses and growth, which is ultimately my objective.
Yeah, I think it's showing a little bit of vulnerability there. I think that's absolutely key because you get that connection. Like if you say something that will resonate with the other person, and it's humbling as well, as you said, exactly how you said it. But saying like, I don't know is absolutely core to how you build and sustain that relationship, because there's a connection there, and then you can actually carry on the conversation there afterwards, and you both see it from each other's point of view. Look, I'm really fascinated by the psychology. I'm jumping around a bit here because that's just the way my brain works, because I work in creative elements and I'm quite a visual orientated person. But I'm fascinated by the performance and psychology of being an athlete. Like I'm an athlete as well, and I did a lot of athletics, running for my county and when I was younger, so I understand that in a way, and I still do mountain running now. Me looking at the Dublin mountains, getting very jealous. But what are the psychology of sports to being in business? Because I think there's a relevance and there's transferable skills here.
Massive, yeah. I think one of the key things in sales and business and in all of this kind of thing is being coachable. Working as part of a team. Sales is a bit of is so similar to business because in a team sport, because in a team sport, in elite athletics, elite, American football, soccer, whatever it is, if it's a team sport, you have to be unbelievably selfish, but also a massive team player. And you have to be able to do that simultaneously. And that is a business is like that, particularly at an elite level of business. So if you're working in an A-game management team, right, or an A-game sales team, marketing team, finance team, whatever, if that's a good team, or a board, you will notice that you need individuals who are probably going to be quite selfish in one way. They're going to want to win. They're going to have opinions. They're going to be quite forthright, but at the same time, they've also got to be able to play with others. And these, for me, in terms of which is a thing that also, really bloody hard work, was one of the things that just made it quite easy for me to adapt from sport into business really quickly, because I was able to kind of exist at quite a senior level at quite a young age, because I've been exposed, and when I talk about coachable, when you're getting screamed at every single day and you're getting consistent feedback on a minute by minute basis, then, you're probably going to be quite an easy person to manage.
So you hit the ground running.
Yeah, massively. Yeah.
That was a bad joke as well.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I definitely hit the ground running, and was able to adapt really quickly to certain situations and learn fast, which again is another trait from elite sport. You have to be able to adapt skills pretty quick.
Yeah, there's lots of different areas that you touched on there, and I think being coachable, well, it is. If you're coachable, especially when you're failing, and the bosses around you, or mentors around you, or whoever else is around you saying, I think you should try this next time, but learn it and do it and practice it, rather than going, yeah, thanks a lot, I just carry on the way that I've done it. And I suppose in football, you have to keep on practicing. It's the key thing. If you want to improve and get that ball in that goal, I'm not sure where you were on the pitch, but if you're going to pass it to that person, you better make sure that you pass it, or you tackle the other person, or you use your technical skills to play around the other person. And it is all of that. And there's an analogy, and there's quite a few metaphors in there for business as well, because you have to work out how to be strategic. And I always like to say there's no such feeling as failure, but I also like to say you fail forward. And what I mean by that is you fail, but you understand. But next time you do that, you're not going to make that same error. You're going to learn from that and do that. Because you mentioned when we first started about, like, life is about failures, but it's learning from that. And the only way for growth is to learn from those. So what were the things that you learned along the way to just fail forward?
Yeah, failures. I think one of those things that just you kind of need time to understand. I think if um, I got used to failure quite quickly. I had a lot of successes, but I used to play up front, right? So I would miss a lot of goals. Some games I would play bad. I would play well.
Yeah.
You had to recover quite quick. And then I failed at ultimately being a professional footballer, and then had to come out of contract and then go into business. Um, but I think I've never been a person, Jason, that kind of looks back too much. So I think that's a helpful thing.
Yeah,
Now
it
that can
is.
also be quite an unhelpful thing as well, in terms of I've learned, certainly over the last 5 to 10 years, to be more reflective, but not reflective with, beating yourself up, but actually, maybe I've seen this before, right? Maybe actually there's some benefit in this perceived failure, where so now I kind of run towards failure. I'm trying as hard as I can to
Mm.
fail at everything, literally. So, and that's a crazy kind of statement to say in a lot of context, but I think you'll probably get it, and some of your listeners as well,
Yeah.
because if you kind of take that, I'm going to go all in and all the time on everything, then you're going to have some failures. But that's part of the process. But again, kind of swings back to consistency. If you do that consistently, a compounded effect over a medium to long term perspective, is you're going to get some
Mhm.
real success. And I kind of I'm still learning that now in my mid 40s, and I'm getting better at it all the time. But for me, I don't see it as failure. I just see it as I'm going to go all in all the time on everything. Some I'm going to win, some I'm not. But you know what? I'm not going to worry either way.
Yeah, I think that's everyone that I interview, like yourself, says exactly the same thing. Because sometimes people focus in on the failures too much, but they don't learn from it. Now their head's gone into failures and their head gets lower. And especially when you're working in this industry, like if your head goes down, you've lost it. The confidence goes, and people know even when you communicate with all the nonverbals and all the voice and all the tone, the tonality, and everything else comes out when you feel like you've had a bad day and you're sitting in the past because you've had 4 or 5 other phone calls which have been crap. And it's getting yourself out of that effect. What would you do to get yourself out back into that state of feeling back on track? And like, I had a couple of either a bad day yesterday, but what do you do to get yourself back on?
Yeah, I think for me, if I'm feeling a little bit maybe not on it as much as I want to feel on it, exercise is a huge. I train every day, religiously, and this morning I kind of woke up. I think I didn't eat as well as I should yesterday. I woke
Yeah.
up, I was a bit groggy. I went out. I did actually a CrossFit session.
Oh
Come
gosh, yeah.
in, had a bit of caffeine, listened to a bit of an audio book, and a little bit of but what in between calls, and a little bit of probably a bit of motivational stuff on YouTube.
Yep.
And I think that kind of thing for me, and just thinking about what I have gratitude for, you know, what I do and what I'm doing is really difficult and hard and challenging, but I like that. right? So,
Yeah.
and I think that is, in that circumstance, it becomes, all this kind of stuff becomes much more sustainable. So in my career, Jason, and I've worked with quite a lot of really high caliber individuals, like real A-game players who have just burned themselves out, right? Whether that be in sales or CEOs or, friends, whatever that might be. And I think that because in the end, they start to really, really, get really down on what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
You don't see it as a good thing, you see it as a negative. They're always busy, right? Why can't someone else do this or do that? And I've got to do everything myself, and all the ego kicks in and all of that kind of stuff. And it all becomes really negative and it's not sustainable. So for me, just kind of clicking back, spending time with like-minded people, and just clicking back and thinking about what I'm grateful for is on a daily basis just keeps me in a relatively good pace.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people that go through that. And I think the last 18 months in this global thing that we've had, I don't want to dwell too much on it, but I think there's been a lot of positives that's come out of it. So all of these high performance people that have been flying all over the world and doing this, that, and the other, being delayed at airports and whatever, now they've actually sat back at home in their bubble and they've reflected. And people that reflect can really sort of change the way that they think and do about things in their life and how you can operate. For me, it was phenomenal because it just gave me complete razor-like focus.
Yeah.
And it really helped me connect my passion with my purpose to my dream. And I've got that. But, there's a lot of burnt out people out there. But I think maybe that reflection is necessary to help us move forward. And I'm sure you've spoken to a lot of people like that.
Yeah, no, I think the ability to reflect, but trying in a productive way is quite a difficult skill. So,
It is.
if we bring it into the sales context, there's a kind of deal I'm working on at the moment, quite a number of deals, quite big deals, right? And I'm kind of thinking to myself, they're game changing deals. If we get this deal, it kind of it's a bit of a game changer. It takes us to that next level. And I think from a point of view of, I will know we won't get all of those deals, right? It's kind of law of averages. That's sales, right? So, but I'll kind of sit there and I'll reflect afterwards, and I've learned and getting better all the time to go, okay, well, how did that work? Right? What did we do well? What didn't we do well? What could we do better? But actually, that's the process I enjoy now. So I think if you can flip these things, Jason, to become productive, to be positive, not to be negative, then all of a sudden it becomes an opportunity, it becomes a strength rather than a weakness. And I think reflection is often used in a negative way, where people sit and stew and worry and get down. And I see that with salespeople in our business, right? In terms of they lose a deal and they're kind of down in the dumps, and and I guess that's always going to be something. If you as you get older, you should get more experience that and be able to use that experience.
Allegedly, yeah. Apparently so.
Yeah. Deals just get bigger. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So the question I wanted to ask, from your perspective, if you were interviewing you, what would you ask yourself?
Great question. Great question. That is a really good question. What would I ask myself? I would probably ask myself that from a point of view of, what are the kind of one or two things that, am I going to find hard to manage me on? Right. I think it's a question I often ask in interviews, and particularly with A-game players, right? High caliber individuals. My job as a CEO, and certainly as in my experience, your job becomes a bit of a line tamer, and because you've got all of these lions that are willing to kind of just rip anyone's head off at any time. And I think from a point of view, so people become quite difficult to manage. And I'm definitely one of those people. So I will be asking me, what are the 1 or 2 things that I really need to be aware of that I'm going to find difficult in managing, Lee Hackett? I think that would be the question.
Awesome. Love it. Absolutely love it. How can people find out more about what you do, Lee?
Yeah, blueprintx.com is the agency, the global agency that I run in terms of advising around tech, but also on LinkedIn. Lee Hackett in LinkedIn. Reach out to me. I'm more than happy to connect and answer any questions that people might have thought of during listening to this podcast, Jason.
Awesome stuff. Look, really appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time. You've been listening to the Global Sales Leader podcast. I'm your host, Jason Cooper. Every week I speak to some phenomenal people. The key and the crunch of this podcast, and I want everyone to realize this, is it's not about us, well, it is about us, but it's about giving some people some really good insights so they can learn and grow. It's all about sharing knowledge, sharing ideas, sharing thoughts. If someone picks up one thing from this podcast and they accelerate their career in what they do, I think we've done our job really well. So look, I thank you so much for that.
No problem. Thanks, Jason. It's been great to be on.